cinema.
Cancun's going to be more appropriate in terms of you might get those shots with the ocean in view, and that would be really good.
Well, all those shots I took you, like there's a whole...
Gracias, bonita. I've got a bottle of tequila we've got to
It's
get out.
completely the wrong way set for the other one, so you just use the method on the other one.
Scoot's favourite, the one he liked on that first day.
So.
I can only do tequila.
This is the camera we're filming on. Just saying that what's happened to this camera is kind of like a physical version of what's happened to the film a little bit, in that the original premise was to just go with a tiny camera and just shoot really guerrilla style and not make a big deal of anything, spend very little money, just go make the movie. But so originally this was the camera here, this bit, but to make it look like 35mm like cinema, we put this special adapter on the front, and this is an SLR lens like you get with a Nikon or a Canon kind of on the front there. So this is basically like an SLR camera, this bit here, that you'd sort of take film photographs with. And all that's going on is this camera here is videoing that film image, which means everything looks sexier and more cinematic. It's got a narrower depth of field. So if I'm filming someone, then the background is out of focus. Okay, let's go the other side of that. Hold on, Darren. This is good, this is good. Perfecto.
It's just on the edge of range and
Okay, so you guys are going to come up this one, right?
yeah.
Okay, guys, you okay, Ian?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Tus tráilers. Visita mi canal.
Good.
Very good. She's here. Okay, they brought her in here last night. No, we don't know where they took her hotel. No, you don't know? This is something that's going to really sell this film, which, when you picture it all together, it'll be really good. It's just changing all the signs. It's going to be a lot of work. When you change every single sign, say something about the zone. Bring me on to it, doesn't matter. So when he backs up, you look at this thing, and as he backs up, I'm going to come round to show that there is something behind it too that he's not aware of. Okay, so this is the original's this. Okay, that's what the sign originally said. And just thought, try and make it more relevant to the story, so whacked in infected zone. And that was just quite easy to do, and was done in like an hour or something. And so there's a lot of those sort of shots that are done.
We saw a lot of Gareth Edwards' films, so we were kind of looking through his show reel, and got very excited by what we were seeing, because what we were seeing in his show reels and stuff was his ability to create CGI at an extraordinary budget, and at the same time create drama. And those two don't always go together. So, and what we saw is in one particular short, which he won the Sci-Fi Channel Award for, was an extraordinary filmmaker. In that one short, we basically saw an extraordinary filmmaker. So we said to him, "Listen, let's do a movie together. It would be fantastic." And he said, "I've got this kind of low-budget CG film," and we thought, "Great." We said, "Let's go. Let's shoot in about 3 months." And he went, "Whoa, hold on a second. That's a bit too quick. You know, you really want to do this?" So we said, "Sure, let's do it." And he got a bit scared because he thought, you know, were we real? Were we really going to do this? So he went off and did a film with the BBC called Attila the Hun, a TV film. And again, amazing CG effects for very little money. And then he came back and he said, "Were you serious?" And we went, "Absolutely, same thing. Let's shoot in about 3 months." So he said, "Great, let's do it."
But when I first seen Gareth's reel, it was mainly CGI, and I was like, "Wow, that looks amazing! You know, great CGI work." Then I learned that he's done all this on his laptop on his own. I was just like, "No way, that is impossible!" You know, Hollywood-style effects on his own laptop, all done by himself for virtually nothing. And I got goosebumps. I thought, "My God, there is something here, something very special."
Yeah.
The world's first monster movie, or a big CGI film on a tiny budget. And it was a concept, wasn't it? It's actually a concept that we got enormously excited about.
Really excited. And his sci-fi short he made in, what, 24 hours, I think?
Yeah.
You know, 24 hours with a budget of, I think, £5 or something like that. And it was one of the best shorts we've ever seen. It was just extraordinary. And we just thought, okay, so he's a real filmmaker who is doing something that we were really excited by, which is creating CG with no budget. And we thought, let's see if we can kind of, you know, do something together. So it was, you could see from his shorts and everything that there was something really special there. And we just thought, let's take a punt and go for it.
Yeah, and it was two halves, I think. You know, one half was, you know, I looked at the dramas for the BBC and all that. I was going, great effects in that, but it's no use just having an effects movie for the sake of an effects movie, you know. And that's when he presented, as James said, the little sci-fi. He made it in 24 hours, and it was just full of atmosphere. And then the third part, when he came in and talked to us about movies and his ideas, you knew this guy had it instantly, because we meet a lot of people, you know, and there's people that talk so unfocused about films, or you know they're not really sure of themselves, or they've not got a sense of what they want to say or do with a film. But every word what he said, you know, you just realised that you're talking to someone that had a vision, you know, a real strong vision, and it's got the ability and the tools to realise that. No, we acquired In Search of a Midnight Kiss when we were at the Edinburgh Film Festival, and it was a brilliant. I mean, they taught us how to make films for $15,000, you know. And when we had the guys over talking about the experience of how they made that film, that was when the light bulb went on. He would be great for Monsters. He would be someone that's been through this process. He's helped because he brings someone like Scoot brings a lot of ideas and a lot of questions and lots of character development, and for someone like Gareth, he was a great ally in the process of making this film.
Yeah, he was a very smart, you know, Scooter's an incredibly smart guy, as well as being an incredibly talented guy, talented actor. So we just thought it would be really good to have someone like that who's not only been through that process and therefore has had a huge experience, but as Al said, is able to really bring something to the process. Now, it was also coupled with the fact that Gareth was looking for kind of a real life couple, and he is, his girlfriend at the time, fiancée at the time, is also an extraordinarily talented actress. So it felt like a perfect combination. So we packed him off to LA and just said, okay, let's go and meet the guys and spend a bit of time with them. And he came back and, you know, they all said, let's do it. When the guys came back from Mexico from shooting the film, there was hundreds of hours of footage. I mean, poor Colin, who's editing the film, was just like, oh my God, you know, what am I going to do? What are we all going to do? And because it was shot like a documentary, it needs a kind of slightly different approach to the edit process. There isn't a script where the editor can go, okay, so this is what this scene needs to do, and this is what this scene, you know, you're working off a treatment. So the original cut, I mean, God knows how long it was, 4.5 hours or something like that, at least. And so we had to spend a lot of time, I mean, you know, together with Gareth, sitting down to work out, okay, what's the story that needs to be told, and how best we can tell it, you know, in a film that ultimately needs to run for around 90 minutes. And it was a hard process. I mean, hard in that it took a long time. And I mean, I think all films go through this process. We certainly find that the edit process is one where the film is often discovered, and it goes through a process where you're at certain times going, what in God's name have we made? And there isn't a movie here. And, you know, everyone says that is part of the process of filmmaking. But because we're kind of used to that, you know, we could also say to Gareth, look, don't worry, we're going to find it, we'll get there, and really kind of help along the way. And it was a very kind of, you know, key part of making that film is just really, you know, between us all, just really kind of working through, okay, what story do we want to tell, and how best to tell it. And then gradually it just got whittled down and down and down until we ended up with our, is it 90-minute film? 90 minutes.
But it was an interesting process because there was no script, you know. The story had to be found much more than traditionally when you were editing a film, but also the world had to be created. and the logic of that world had to be explained and make sense all the way through the film as well. And it constantly presented problems, you know, creating a logical world and a logical journey, you know, and you're dealing with three different elements. It's a road movie, a love story, and a monster movie, you know, and trying to make all of that cohesive and feel natural and believable, you know. And it was, you know, it was a fight, it was a battle to achieve that.
And also making sure, you know, from our perspective as producers, making sure that Gareth was being allowed to make the film he wanted to make. So, you know, you have to kind of constantly, as a producer, you're trying to just allow him to make the film that is his movie, as it were, so that his film is shining through at the same time as, you know, trying to kind of, you know, create the story or help create the story.
Yeah.
But it was a great process, and we kind of got to the end of it, and you know, were happy.
And what's great about being an independent, not delivering to a studio or anything like that as well, is that we locked the picture, and that's normally when you hand it over to a studio or something, and that's it. You know, it goes on release. But we were fortunate enough to be in a position where we locked the picture, had our first screening, and went, God, we need to cut another few minutes off. Went to the world premiere at South by Southwest. You know what? Another 4 minutes needs to come off. Went to Cannes and then took another 2 minutes off. So even from the locked picture to the final delivery that we're all happy with, there was actually 9 minutes that came out of that film, you know, which I think made a big difference to the feeling and the pace, and you know. But and having said that, there's probably another movie in there that's much longer as well and more atmospheric, and you know, it could have went all different ways. On the screen it says there will be a Jeep in the tree, you know, and you got it, you absolutely seen it. I think it was the very hardest part of the process for Gareth, for sure, because we'd made the film, we started to get, this is really exciting, we think we have a film here, and now all the pressure was on him about what are these creatures going to look like now. And it's one thing having something written in the screen, and it's another thing planting them into the film, and do you believe this world now when the creatures are there? And it was a massive moment, a really big moment.
He came to us and he kind of said, he gave us all these cards of all these monsters and said, which monster do you like? And we looked at this, literally, I don't know, 150 different monsters, and we were just, you know, it doesn't make any difference. Exactly, it doesn't make any difference what we think. To be honest with you, it's got to just be, you know, which monster do you like? Because they all look good. We know that you're going to just make something crazy and brilliant. So it was you know, it was an I mean, we had seen a flavour of it when he did the tests for the film. He went off and did these tests so that we could kind of see how he could make the CG on, you know, and use the cameras and everything, because we'd use these very small little cameras. And he did these tests, which were also as though they were the best short films we'd seen. They were extraordinary. There was more atmosphere in those tests than certainly in most short films we see. And he'd kind of shown a bit of action with CG, and of course there's no green screen or anything like that, which is the joy of it for everybody. It's just, you know, in his head he can see that there's going to be a monster there, or a plane there, or a sign there, or, you know, whatever. And that's, you know, that's what makes him so fantastic, 'cause he's got the ability to see it, shoot it, and direct it at the same time.
I think Monsters is a world first, you know, a micro-budget feature that can be released internationally all over the world, that has quality, and it's a monster movie, you know, it's a road movie, and it's a love story, and it's highly unique film, you know, and I think there's going to be a lot of people replicating
tráilers,
and replicating the approach to the filmmaking process, and it's just beginning to become a very exciting time for the liberation of filmmaking, really, isn't it?
I mean, his idea for it actually came when he first came to see us. I think when he first came to see us, it was 7 or 8 months before Cloverfield had come out. Yeah. And then, of course, before District 9 had come out. So actually, he was way ahead of the curve on that. And I agree. I mean, for us, it was one of the most exciting filmmaking experiences ever, because it was incredibly liberating. and you just kind of just went with it, and you know, it just means it becomes incredibly creative. But I think this is, I agree with Al, it's going to be, this is, you know, we're going to see a lot more of this. Yeah. And it's going to challenge some norms of Hollywood. It's kind of like, you know, this is like
action. They don't own action in CGI films anymore. It's becoming available to everyone, you know, which is the whole evolution of the filmmaking process is suddenly being a bit digital, has helped a lot more people. Distribution is always a problem, but that's going to be broken down soon as well, you know.
We always believed in Gareth, and we always believed something extraordinary was going to happen. It was a huge punt, and you know, Al and I had to just put you know, our head on the line for it. But we, you know, we genuinely believed in him and in the project, and it came out, you know, as a wonderful film, which we're really proud of. Yeah,
it's a beautiful and magical film, and a great experience, and you know, as I say, a world first there. I think, you know, it really is, and make us want to make more films like that with that approach. Yeah.
Basically, I've always wanted to be a filmmaker, like ever since I was, I sort of joke ever since I was a fetus. And saw Star Wars, I don't remember seeing it for the first time, but wanted to join the Rebel Alliance and blow up the Death Star, and then found out it wasn't true, it's all a lie, created by people called filmmakers. So I thought, well, the second best option is to become one of those. When I was a kid, we went on holiday, and my dad bought a video camera, and I quickly stole it and started making little short films with my friends. And I was so used to just picking up the camera and making a film within like a day that when I went to film school, it was a real shock to the system, because it was less about the ideas and the storytelling and much more about the equipment and all the logistics and the money and everything. And so I was kind of determined to there must be a better way of making films than this is insane. And I happened to be living with a guy who was studying this new thing called computer animation, and it just opened my eyes basically, and it seemed like it would be the solution to everything that I was finding a problem in terms of how you make a film. Yeah, so you graduate, you make a short film, and then you think Hollywood's going to call you up and give you this movie deal, and it just doesn't happen, or it didn't for me. And so I bought a computer, got really into debt, and just started learning the software, because I thought, well, this isn't going to fall out of the sky, no one's going to give me the opportunity, I've got to do this myself. And so I just learned how to do visual effects to help my own filmmaking, and then just got basically sidetracked in this 5-year career doing visual effects, mainly for TV. And then essentially what I did was bribe my way into directing again by saying to producers, if you let me direct a TV show, I will do the visual effects for free, or very, very cheap. And eventually they let me. And the great thing is that when you do visual effects, you can double the look of your film. So all these little TV programs I was doing that looked like they were very little money looked like they were much more expensive. And very quickly, I managed to climb my way up the ladder. I was basically on holiday, and I was watching these fishermen pull in this net from the ocean, and when you do visual effects for a living, you can't help but imagine crazy stuff all the time, and they were really struggling. I was thinking, well, what's on the end of this net? And so I just pictured it'd be really funny if this giant tentacled dead animal came up. And I imagined it happening, and what was interesting is the guys on the boat couldn't see this, so they carried on like it was an everyday thing. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. Like, what kind of world is that where something so bizarre as a giant creature is kind of an everyday occurrence? And once I had that idea, it just clicked. And I spent the rest of the holiday picturing other stuff, and I thought this could be a really easy way to make a cheap film that is high concept and, you know, got a lot of production value. I think when you're telling a story, like for the cinema, you want to tell a universal story. You want to pick something that everyone can associate with and understand. And one of the main goals you can have is to get back home, is a journey home. So
tráilers.
Once we cast 2 Americans, it was like, well, their journey back home is going to be back to America. And then obviously that journey's got to get progressively worse and worse to, you know, at one point they're going to be on foot. So it's like, well, where can you walk back to America, through which area? And so it's a choice between Canada and Central America. And for me, like, having never been to both at the time, I just thought Central America is going to be, like, going to provide so much more visually exciting and texture to look at. So we went with that. It was our intention to do something different, and the problem is if you are looking at close to doing that, it then becomes really hard to explain it. But it's a monster movie wrapped inside a love story, set in a road movie in a post-apocalyptic world in the middle of Central America. Yeah, so essentially at the heart of the film is these two people. And one of them is a war photographer, and he's covering the events that are happening in Central America about these creatures. And he has to go, and he doesn't want to, but he has to go and get his boss's daughter and get her back home. And I thought to myself, well, in this story, they're obviously going to start off as strangers and potentially grow closer as the journey goes. And so it was a choice between, do you have people who really don't know each other and then pretend they can, you know, they can act as strangers really well, but then is the chemistry going to work? Or do you have people with genuine chemistry? And I really wanted the genuine chemistry to be up on screen, and so I was adamant that whoever we got would be a real couple. And it just so happened that Vertigo were distributing a film called In Search of a Midnight Kiss, starring Scoot McNairy. And I watched this and I just thought, this guy's amazing. And we contacted him, and he happens to have a girlfriend who was an actress, and he sent her picture through. And honestly, I looked at that picture and thought, 'cause she's gorgeous, Whitney, and just thought, she's too good looking. Like, this is, you know, to ourselves, we were saying we want to make, you know, the world's most realistic monster movie, like, and then I met her, and she's so down to earth and lovable. It was like, if I get these two to agree to do this, like, then that's our biggest problem solved. People watch the film, and their reaction when you tell them that some of these people in the film are not actors and they're people we met like 10 minutes before we started filming, is they just don't believe you. And what's great, or what I learned, is that basically you can get a brilliant performance out of non-actors as long as you don't tell them what to say or do, because everyone is a brilliant actor at themselves. And so you just tell them the situation and you give them some parameters, and then it was up to Scoot and Whitney, the actors, to basically like dance around them and get these performances out of them. And they did an incredible job. I mean, there's one guy in there that's a ticket seller, and he should win a Central American Oscar for his performance. He's fantastic, and he just works in the cafe over the road. I honestly believe that if we had more crew members than we did, we just had a handful of people, it would have been a worse film. I think the fact that we could go in and out of these places and go unnoticed and no one really paying attention, and we could get all these stuff and all these people and all this background detail, and it would look completely authentic because life was just continuing as normal. I think the problem with Hollywood films is that they're kind of trying to recreate this stuff, spending so much money that just to get to the point where it looks like, you know, as the world looks when you walk down the street, costs millions. And so by reducing it to just a couple of people, essentially, you get all that for free. For me, the most amazing thing about being in Central America is that you'll be filming like a shot of a bus or something, and in your mind you're thinking, this is great, I just need one more detail to make this shot perfect, and a little piglet will run across the road, or something like this, and every single shot, something just appeared or was there that just you could never think of, but just once as soon as it's there, you go, yeah, that's like real life, those things are there. I remember now when I'm on holiday, I see that kind of stuff, and it was all those stuff you could never bring to a film yourself because you'd never think of them all, but when they're in front of you, you know, you shoot the hell out of them, and I think hopefully, you know, we got as many as we can in the film, and as a result you watch it and you just, it's like being on one of those journeys you go on when you go backpacking or something. It feels to me like I wanted to get that essence of what it's like to travel and go on an adventure. for most of the shots, I would be filming, and in my mind I'd be thinking, okay, wait for a good moment, wait for a good moment, wait for something that'll definitely be in the film, and then suddenly Scoot will say something, or something will happen, or Whitney will do something, and it'll be like, this is fantastic, and then I'll pan off them, and I'll pan onto nothing, because in my mind I want to put a giant wall, or a big fence, or helicopters, or tanks, or something that's going to sail the world. And it was really dangerous doing this, because as you're doing it, you're going off the very thing that you want to, you want to concentrate on, but so it was quite a brave thing to keep doing in a way, or it felt stupid. And everyone would look at the rushes, and they obviously can't see the CGI, and suddenly this great moment's happening, and I'm panning off it to nothing, and it freaks people out, like, what the hell are you doing? We knew we shouldn't let him film this. And then later, when they see the film and it's all in there, it's like, okay, get it. So basically the computers, that they made Jurassic Park on and films like that, you can go down the road and buy a laptop and it's more powerful. So everything that was true like a long time ago, when I was growing up at film school, is no longer the case. And the idea that you can pretty much go make a Hollywood movie, with a handful of people from home, is going to be more and more common, I think. You have to be kind of schizophrenic when you do visual effects and direct something yourself, in that when you're filming it, all you're thinking about is what's best for the film. Like, forget how hard it's going to be to do the graphics. It's purely, we're going to just make decisions that are best for the movie. And then, like a few months later, you're sitting at home in front of this computer, cursing that director, side of yourself that made all these decisions, because now you've got to go in and fix it all. And I essentially ended up having to do about 250 visual effects on my own over about 5 months. I think every stage of the film was very hard, and one of the ones that would be fighting for the hardest stage of the film would be the creature design. It was so important to get it right, or as good as we could. And so I spent, as soon as they said, yeah, let's do this, every spare moment when I was on the phone or when I was traveling, I would doodle a creature design. And if I liked it, I'd put it in my bag and keep it. And when it came around to actually sitting and doing the effect shots, I probably had about 2,000 designs, and I cherry-picked my favourite ones and I put them on a board and I brought them in. It was kind of like a strange kind of beauty queen competition where I showed the producers all these different designs and was like, okay, and I gave them some stickers, put a sticker on them when you like, and it was like rabbit in your headlights. They didn't know what to do, and they just didn't move for like 10 minutes. And I couldn't tell, like, do they not like them? Do they not know what to do? And in the end, they were just like, there's too many choices. And so, which one do you want? And I was like, well, this is the one I hoped you would pick. And they were like, yeah, let's go with that. So we didn't have a script. Had instead a load of pages in a file of facts that represented the whole film. And we'd drive along and we'd see something really cool and interesting, and we would pick a scene that we could shoot, and we'd have a quick conversation, or maybe none, with the actors, jump out and pretty much start filming it. And as a result, instead of these nice little moments that you put together in the edit, I would end up with like an hour of a scene of completely different stuff. And so it became really difficult for me and the editor, Colin, to kind of get this down to what would be 2 minutes on screen. In the end, we were sort of spoilt for choice, I feel. Like, we had so many good things. It was like, how do we get this? Our first cut of the film was 4.5 hours. How do we get that down to the 90 minutes we wanted it to be? And most of our edit was just trying to crunch those 4.5 hours down to 90 without losing all this magic that we thought we had. Vertigo greenlit the film, and 3 months later I had a script and we were out there filming. We shot for 6 weeks, came back, edited for about 4 months, then went back out for 10 days, and edited probably for another 2 months, then picture locked, and I did visual effects for 5 months. And then we literally ran out of the dub and straight onto a plane and hit play, and that was our world premiere at South by Southwest. The film is not even out, and I am really happy with the way it's gone. Like, I wouldn't ask for anything. I mean, if you'd sat us a year ago and said, okay, blue sky, best case scenario, what happens to the film? In my opinion, we've already beat that, and the film's not even been released. Like, the response has been great. You know, we've got all the distribution around the world. I can't quite believe it. I still think I'm going to wake up and be back 2 years ago before we started filming. But you know, I'm completely happy with the way it's gone. My main goal when we started this was, would I end up with a DVD that I'd be proud to put on a shelf and I wouldn't be embarrassed about, and you know, it could be up there with my other films that I like. And I think we kind of did that. I'm pretty happy with it.
I got involved in Monsters. I'd met James and Al, the producers. They had distributed a film that I'd worked on called In Search of a Midnight Kiss, and met with them, and then they gave me a buzz, or rang me up one day and said, would you be interested in doing this film? It's going to be all improvised. And you know, I was like, well, what's the premise of it? And he was like, well, we're going to be down in Mexico, shooting in Mexico about a couple of some sort, because I was trying to help him cast it at the time. I didn't think I was going to be available. And I was like, you know, what about these guys, or what about these guys, or, you know, here's these couples. He's like, no. And then, I forget what it was, but my availability came up for October, and they're like, well, would you be into it? I'm like, well, sure, like, who's directing it? And he sent me over Gareth's stuff, a short film that he had done, Factory Farm, and Attila the Hun. And I was floored, man. I was blown away at the effects that he had done on Attila. And I was like, sure, like, let's give it a go. It sounds incredibly dangerous and incredibly stupid, and I don't know any other producer that would take on a project such as. So sure, let's go for it. Gareth came over, flew to our house, met with us. We chatted a bit about the project and the outline that he had put together at the time. It was like 4 pages, and it ended up being about, I think at the end of it was like 12 to 14 pages. And read the outline, just kind of hashed out some of the story points and stuff, and we worked together, me, him, and Whitney, of just ideas that we had and characters that we wanted to play and what have you. And then within 3 months, we were off and running, shooting down in Mexico. I mean, I was excited about it. It was something completely new, completely different. The improvising thing, I wasn't taken back at it at first, but I do remember like thinking, oh, well, that'll be no problem. We'll just improvise our whole way through it. And then I didn't realize how difficult that would be when you're improvising on things that you can't see. You know, Gareth would be yelling things to you, such as, you know, F-16 plane going over your head, you know, Black Hawk helicopter off in the distance, go there, photograph that, monster carcass on the ground here. And it's like you don't know what you're looking at. And that part of it was incredibly bizarre, and I kept saying, like, well, how far is it, or what does it look like? And he was like, just wherever you photograph, I will put it there. So just note to your left or to your right or above you, and like wherever you look, I'll put it in the shot. And so it was really bizarre for me to work like that, as well as he doesn't use tracking points for CGI, which blows my mind. I still don't understand how he does it. He was like, it's all floating camera, and he doesn't shoot any plates. So I was just kind of like, how is this all going to come together? Like, and I was just floored when I saw it of how seamless it was. Being that there was no script, it was just all backstory and research on photojournalism, And I went up to the woods for like 2 weeks and just kind of hung out up there and shot some photography, read some books on photography, and read a bunch of books on war photography journalism. And so it was mostly just spending a lot of time alone. I watched a couple documentaries when I got back on war photography and journalism, and I noticed that they're all really boring people. I mean, obviously they've seen so much stuff, but they're all very secluded and quiet and just kind of in their own heads. And I was just kind of like, well, that's not going to make for a good character that's interesting as somebody that such as that. And so a buddy of mine, Andrew Calder, he's always got these great stories. He's a photographer as well, but he's everything. He's a photographer, he's a writer, he's a director. I mean, he's a sailor. He knows how to do everything. And I remember talking to him one time, and he was like, you know, I was like, oh, the Baja 1000, have you seen this documentary, Dust to Glory? And he was like, I was in the Baja 1000 one time. And I was like, really? And he was just this guy that had just kind of done everything. And I was like, that's kind of who I see the character as, is not necessarily a character of Andrew, which I did end up taking his name, but more of somebody who'd done it all. He'd been everywhere and just done anything. And I sat down with Andrew and chatted him up for about 5 hours and recorded it, and then went back and then just took bits and pieces from that conversation and incorporated them into the character. Well, working with Gareth was awesome. I mean, he's super, super calm, super chill. It's hard because, like, he doesn't really get excited. He's very English. I recall on the last day of shooting, I was like, so what do you think? Like, are you happy? And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm over the moon. It's like, well, all right, well, don't get too excited about it. But he was great. He was very nurturing, you know. He really held our hand through this whole thing. And, you know, when there was parts when we get frustrated about what we were doing and like not being able to see something, I'm like, well, what's it mean? He would take the time to stop and explain everything and draw things out, and he'd sketch up maps for us so we could geographically know exactly what we are doing and where we are and where we were headed. But all in all, I mean, he was a fantastic director. I mean, I had a great time working with him. He was very patient and incredibly inspiring. You know, just through every bit of the process. I love it. I mean, like, honestly, I prefer that much more than a larger crew. I feel like we get more done. Everybody's working together. Everybody's a part of the creative process. It's not just one person telling you where to stand and what to do, what to say. Everybody's open to new ideas. It was great. I mean, I remember at one point we were in Mexico and I was watching the Hearts of Darkness Coppola thing, and they had Coda, the other documentary that they did when he was shooting the other movie with Tim Roth. And he's yelling at these people because everyone's late and it's not going right. And he goes, what are all these people doing here? Why are we waiting? All we need is 2 actors, a camera, a sound man, and a van like that. And the camera pans over the van, and I'm like, that's the van we're in. And that's all you need is a camera, the actors, and a sound guy, and hit the road running and go make the movie.
Scoot and I came over for the Midnight Kiss premiere in the UK, and then when we came back from that, he got an email about, from James, that they wanted a real couple to do this film, and they basically had this sort of like log line, like a very basic pitch, and so we're thinking like, oh yeah, we know this couple, and they'd be great, and they go, no, we want you guys to do it. And we're like, wow, that's cool. Okay, well, tell us more. And James said, well, if you're interested, I'll send the director over, and you guys can talk and meet. And so then we decided, well, I think it's best if you don't book him a hotel, and he's going to stay on our couch for a week, and then we'll really get to know each other, because if we're going to be in the jungle and all these different crazy environments together
tráilers.
for extended
Visita mi
periods
canal.
of time, we want to be sure that we can do it. And so he came over, and Gareth came right over and stayed on our couch, and we stayed up until, in the wee hours of the morning, talking and going over, the idea and his vision, and then we played some board games in there too. I was really excited to take on a project like this because, the travel was really cool and interesting, and, I don't know, I speak Spanish, and so I wanted, anything that has to do with Spanish, I'm like, oh yes, right on, cool, I can practice, and, so that was like initially the exciting part of it for me. And then obviously the story started to unfold, and this is starting to sound really interesting and really cool and crazy and scary, and not scary as in horror film scary. Scary like, oh wow, we really are going to go and do this sort of guerrilla filmmaking in a very different way than is traditionally done, And the entire thing, was collaborative from day one until it came from our mouths. We all had so many discussions about the characters and the backstory. And actually, Annalee Jeffries, who plays the homeless lady pushing the shopping cart at the end, was my mentor growing up from Houston, Texas. So I called her up and said, can you come out? We're doing this crazy film, and we have, some pages of the story, but we really don't know how to rehearse for this. We can't really run lines or anything, And so she came out, and we decided the best thing to do was just work the backstory. And so with Gareth, we had developed sort of the backstory, and then took it even further with our own personal specifics and things that we could bring to it. Working with Annalee and with each other, because Scoot and I, had many conversations, obviously living together at the time, about the film, and we were getting very excited, and it just became, from the time we woke up until the time we went to sleep, talking about, how we were going to prepare and different ideas. He's something else. He has a very clear vision, obviously coming from a visual background of CGI. He always has this vision in his head, but oftentimes you get a director that has the vision but doesn't know how to communicate with the actors, or vice versa, is really good with communicating with actors but doesn't know how to set the shots up. And it's hard, it's really hard to find somebody that can do both. And he was really great about being very calm and keeping everything sort of not actory feeling, meaning it wasn't like, and action, and cut, it was very organic, the entire process. We'd wake up early, and Gareth and Jim Spencer would have gone recceing, looking around and seeing where would be a good place to shoot. and they would come back and we'd just be having breakfast or something, and so then, you know, we'd all hop in the Westfalia or whatever, the van, and we would go and start shooting. If we would see something along the way, we would just pull over and yeah, I mean, if it worked, or even if we didn't think it would work, we would just pull over and just do something, you know, look at things, talk about something. Gareth would throw out a topic, a couple of topics, and we'd just shoot whatever, you know. If it seemed to maybe make sense, maybe it would work its way in there. If not, whatever, you know, but why not just try it? So we were just trying things, yeah. So the shooting started in, I guess it was Cabo. We had 2 days, which is not bad at all. We had 2 days before we really started, which was sort of a tease, you know. It was like, oh, here, you know, go sit by the pool and you guys talk, and then we're going to throw you into the jungle. And so, literally, yeah, so we started there and then flew over to Los Mochis in central Mexico. No, I can't remember if we shot anything in Baja. Anyhow, we went to Los Mochis, then took the train through Copper Canyon into Creel, and then into Mexico City. Oh, we went through Chihuahua, and then Mexico City, and then below Mexico City for Day of the Dead stuff, and then over to the Yucatan Peninsula, and then down through Belize. We drove, and then into Guatemala, and then flew back into Cancun, and then to Galveston, and then later, a week and a half, 2 weeks in Costa Rica. So yeah. I thought it was going to be more difficult to react to things that weren't there. However, Gareth did a really good job of explaining, but not explaining too much about what we would be reacting to. So naturally, if there's a plane flying by, we had a system we had to quickly figure out, because at one point Scoot and I would be like looking in different directions. The plane. So he said, you know, okay, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, you know, well, not 4 o'clock, obviously, it's not down there. But anyhow, yeah, so we had a little system that we developed, and then as far as the creatures go, he was very vague about that, and I think that it was improv. I mean, I think he was still deciding what exactly they were going to be as we were shooting, but that made it so much better to have not too much detail, because you kill yourself with too much detail, you know, something that's not there, you know. It became more of a feeling, and so we sort of had this emotional reaction to the creatures